Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning, everybody.
Welcome. Happy Monday.
Yeah.
It's time to do Buy Here, Pay Here again. It's Monday. Here we go again. Everybody takes a break on Sunday.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That's I think
Maybe got you off guard.
I don't know that we're always taking a break on a Sunday, but
yeah,
it's we find time just about every day to talk about stuff and to be planning.
Well, that's true.
That.
Just mean the Buy Here, Pay Here world, for the most part, takes a break on Sunday.
It does.
Right.
So happy day after Sunday.
Yeah.
The start of the next week.
Yeah. Welcome. Yeah. Let's dive in. We got a couple of announcements. So we got the Utah conference coming up. We got a last minute invitation.
I think this is the first time that we've really talked about that. The Utah conference is on Thursday.
Yeah. And they've been through some changes with their organization, and they're now they've got a new director. And so it's right close. It's an hour from our home. So we're happy to go down on Thursday and spend some time with Utah folks.
Just go and,
for sure,
introduce ourselves and see how we can help.
We got Bill Elizondo joining us on Friday. That'll be fun. That's always a good time. Should we break out Bill on a drill?
Oh, you know what? I've got it up in the closet. I can make sure that we have that before we do the thing on Friday. I think that's a great idea.
Hashtag Bill on a drill. Yeah. And then, of course, NIADA coming up on the 19th through the 22nd of June next month. So time to get your tickets.
And we do have a date change that we need to just kind of inform y'all, because we've been talking about when we're doing our next live stream, and we were talking about July, and that has been shifted to August 1st. So the first day of August.
And once again, Brent Carmichael will be co-hosting
Brent Carmichael
with
will
us.
be coming, and it's going to be on deal structure, and I think we're going to have around 4 sessions. And so it'll be around 6 hours.
I mean, we may do some of those at hour and a half sessions, because we're going to drill into the numbers on that one. We're going to break down deal structure, and we've got 4 different categories we've identified that we want to measure. So we'll be reaching out to vendors and dealers. And I can tell you, if you're a dealer with a larger portfolio, especially if what we're going to be looking for is portfolios that have been self-serviced and, probably at least 1,000 accounts. And so we're going to look for strings of data that are kind of continuous, and so we can measure losses and look at results and get specific about deal structure. What do we know? What can we know from the numbers?
And I know we're going to have more information as we get closer, but we're going to be kind of putting it out there for some dealers that might want to participate as kind of case studies.
Right.
Yeah, in what it is that we're what our objectives are.
Sure.
So we'll get clearer about what the objectives are, and let y'all know when we get
look for that by email.
Look for that by email. So also just we really like having people here when we have a guest, having a dealer as well when we're having a guest. And so we've got guests every Friday of this month. So if you're interested in being kind of like a dealer panelist, raise your hand and let us know. And, we'll extend the invitation and have you join us. Like, as we have Bill coming this Friday. The next Friday, I think, is Maggie. And then the Friday after that is Brent.
Oh, Brent Carmichael.
Brent Carmichael. Right. So,
if a dealer want to join any of these conversations, just like our conversation today, we're happy to have dealers sit in just as kind of what I call front row dealers. You're just part of the conversation. And you don't need to present anything or be prepared to speak about anything in particular. Just listen in and
I'm going to throw this up here. It's a phone number for help, or if you want to participate, let us know. And then we can, so it's text us 903-816-0216, or send us a message via YouTube or whatever. Okay. So are we done talking about the
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should get to a topic.
Let's do it.
What's the topic for today?
Today is about setting a tone in collections. And this is an interesting topic. We've actually got our Wednesday topic is related, but we're going to kind of save some very specific parts about attitude and approach for that conversation on Wednesday. For today, I want to first differentiate, like when we talk about that first payment, I'm not talking about a first payment default. So in our industry, first payment default would be that customer doesn't follow through on the very first payment, right? Okay. So so I'll just quickly go through that. If you do have a first payment default, and I'd love to hear from some dealers in the thread here, is like typically based on many years of experience, I've been told this way back when I got in. I found it to generally be true. When you've got a customer who defaults on the very first payment, there's a fairly high percentage of those customers that are skipping, like leaving the area. And so it's one that we feel like you need to act quickly. Like in our case, my own dealership, we would have had a practice of the same night. Like if a Friday, the very first payment came due, we would have been at least calling, knocking on the door, going out and verifying the customer just to really set a tone with a first payment default. Like this is, so people can forget it's a new practice, but it just really sets a tone early to say, this is super important. It's your very first payment. And you're not getting here on time. So that's a different thing though. That's not.
No. Really, and that's also, just to clarify, when you had your own dealership, you did a fair amount of your own repoing, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, our team. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did some of them. Sure.
Yeah. And so like if someone is late on their first payment, what are you suggesting that they immediately call their agent that's a repo agent and say, go get the car? Are you saying go like knock on their door?
I'm saying go find the customer.
Go find the customer or go find the car?
Keep in mind, a lot of this, for you to take this approach, you have to back up and say, okay, what was said to the customer specifically at closing? Okay. And then what has happened leading up to the first payment? Did they get a welcome call? Did they get a courtesy text message the day before?
There's
or
a
the
bit
morning
before
of? There's a process
that happens before that.
So I'm probably not going to immediately order repossession just because the customer had a call, but it's certainly going to be a full court press
on the first payment,
at the close of the first day. Like on the very first day, if the payment comes due on the very first day, so it's a full court press. It's text messages, phone calls, it's all the stuff, and probably a visit to the home, and a repo agent can, yes or no, we may or may not act to repossess on the very first evening of the first payment, because it's just that serious. Like if you've got somebody who's in a brand new account, like I said, we just know that typically when you've got that situation, I should say typically, but in a much higher percentage of the cases, that customer is taking steps to
default,
leave the country or leave the area, whatever. It's like, that's where we just have to act very swiftly.
But part of that, like you said, is, the white hat approach. Cause it's the white hat approach is that you've done all of the things prior to their first payment being due, to set the stage of, this is the due date. We are in agreement. This is the first due date. This is, if you got any problems, please call us, let us know. It's more important that you make your car payment than you take care of a repair if something like that happens. So if it's you're feeling like you have a choice, I mean, it's like all of those things have happened already where you've communicated with them. These are the things, and we're really serious about this. We're here to help. And then they're late on the first payment, and it's like, boom, don't make me repo you.
Yeah. So let's go through this, and we're going to touch on this more specifically in a future episode in the month of May. Like those of you who didn't know, we're doing collections throughout the month of May. So we'll talk about this more specifically on a future episode. But basically, I hear myself saying that, and I think attorneys like Steve Levine thinking, wow, you're going to rush out and repossess the customer on the very first evening of the very first payment. Like that scares me as an attorney. So
don't put words into Steve if you're listening.
Steve, I know I scared you. She doesn't know. I know that when you talk about that, when you hear dealers talk about doing this kind of strict enforcement, it's got to make you a little uncomfortable. However, I think one of the things that certainly as a dealer, if I were a white hat dealer, we would not be repossessing unless we had a clear documented track. So we've done this, we've notified the customer here, we've got text messages, the whole thing. It's all well documented. Like there is a well documented log of our efforts to.
Yeah. And one of the things that I know that you really, when Jim had his own dealership, and he's written articles on this, Friday means Friday. Friday doesn't mean Saturday morning.
So
Friday means Friday. And so when your due date is on Friday, your due date is on Friday, unless you've called.
Unless we've reached an
alternate understanding. Yeah. But if there's zero communication from them and it's like 6:00 on Friday, and you've expressed to them, the due date is Friday, so it needs to be into us. It will be counted as late if it's not into us by 6:00 on Friday.
Right. So that's why, it's very strict. And keep in mind, we've already covered this in our first couple episodes on this subject. Just like this, we have to recognize that the customer who's financing with us as the new dealer, they may have financed with others in the past who had an entirely different approach. So that means that we have a job, we have a responsibility really to communicate as clearly as possible to the customer. This is our expectation. This is, and so I never, the approach that we would never recommend using the threatening any kind of repossession or any kind of serious enforcement action. You just do it. So we'll talk about those things later.
And what you're saying is it's not saying we're going to repossess if you don't do this. It's just repossess.
You just repossess. You make it super clear and then, that this is expected. We expect a phone call from you if something happens and you can't. So you just got to set the tone right away.
There's so many things that I have a question about, but we spent a bit of time last night talking about this, and Jim's like, bring me the hard questions, and I'm like, I could rabbit hole the hell out of this.
Yeah, for sure. I welcome it.
But I 100%, 110% get, Friday means Friday, setting a tone, because once you set that tone, you think about it like in any kind of interaction you have with someone where you are the leader, I think in terms of like that grandma approach or whatever. It's like, this is what is expected of you. And if this doesn't happen, then there will be consequences.
You will feel the consequences.
And I want to wrap my arms around you and love you and help you. But if you aren't communicating with us, then there's not an awful lot that we can do about it. So one of the things we were talking about last night is, how hard is hard. And it's like, this is, I after having the conversation, it's kind of like, okay, it's Friday, and this is being firm. This is being fair, because you've this whole the white hat way is, you're going to be firm, but you're going to be fair, because you've opened the opportunity. You've told them, if you've got a problem, call me. If you've got a problem, call me. If you've got a problem, call me. Right. It's that communication line is open. And I expect you to use it if you got a problem, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think for any that are listening that are, newer to this business, I think one of the things that's in the background that we don't talk enough about, but let's face some realities. We're financing a customer who hasn't shown a lot of financial responsibility in the past. Their credit report confirms that. They may have had past repossessions. They've certainly not done well about getting payments in on time. And so for us to go through a retraining process here, to have the customer really understand what success looks like and what having a long-term account relationship with us looks like, that's on us to be clear about that. Because again, I think we know that customers come to us from, and this is frankly, this is part of what makes me nervous about tax refund season, or go fast, close the deal. And if we don't slow down, like you heard Tommy talk a lot about on the sales side of things, Tommy Brandis, our dealer friend in Pennsylvania, longtime dealer, and he'll be with us at the end of May too. He's, we talk about, we got to slow things down, got to make sure that we've done our part. Why would we expect different results with the customer if we haven't successfully communicated to them how things are going to be different with us versus those 3 bad credit accounts on their report, right now. Like, how can we expect different results? Well, we got to communicate differently. We got to be super clear about expectations, and then we got to enforce them. We've got to help the customer understand. Like you use the grandma analogy often about collections, and I think it's appropriate. I just think you don't see grandma probably if it's really working well from a discipline standpoint. You don't see grandma say, "If you do that again, I'm going to swat you." Instead, it's a SWAT. It's like they feel the SWAT before they hear a threat.
Yeah, we are not
advocating.
In any way advocating.
No, it's just an example. It's enforcement. It's what basically when we know that reward and punishment.
I hope that, Phil, I hope when you say great points, you're talking about the enforce, but not the SWAT part.
The SWAT?
Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It still happens. We all know. Some grandmas.
Well, and part of our conversation last night was, okay, so, Friday is Friday. And we've communicated because, a lot of times if you're getting, most people are going to be biweekly, right? Not the SWAT.
Not
Thank
the SWAT
you.
bill
Thank you,
says,
Bill. Most people are going to be biweekly. And so, you've got like 2 weeks before their first payment is due, or it might be a week if you're doing payday payments. But so you've got at least a week, possibly 2 weeks before your first payment is due. That gives you a beautiful opportunity and a beautiful window to communicate, educate.
Yeah.
Communicate and educate. And, it's the welcome call. It's the videos that you're sending over the course of, you're sending a series. We talked about that last week. It's like, hey, this is, if you got a problem, this is the thing. If you've got a mechanical problem, this is the thing. If you,
I think we've covered that.
Yeah. Okay. So they know this. And so they give us a call. Let's just say that on their first payment, they're giving us a call on Friday, and they're saying, I can't make the payment today.
And so the reaction is, this is something that I think collectors need to
first
practice.
Payment though. First payment.
Very first. Well, wait, let's make this different. How do you handle a first payment default? The very first payment is different. Like that's strict. Like that's still an attitude of understanding.
But so let's say that they did call you and they said, my first payment, I can't make the payment, but they're calling you.
But let's clarify the difference between this. They could have made 7 payments already exactly on time, no problem. And now we're on the 8th payment as an example. Okay. So I want to differentiate. If it's a very first payment, we got to be super strict. And that's really not what we're here to talk about is first payment defaults. We hope that's the exception rather than the rule. But we know the rule is going to be most of your customers will at some point in their contract call and say, hey, I'm short on the payment. We hope they're calling, and we need to recognize that when that happens. When the customer calls, let's recognize that. I remember a very successful dealer years ago said in a conference setting, and it really resonated with me, is like, when you've got a customer who will reach out to you and talk to you when there's a problem with the payment, that is just gold. We just need to recognize in our business that is a customer who's doing what we ask them to do, which is communicate. Now they're calling us. And so let's first recognize they've done what we asked them to do, and let's meet that with the right attitude.
Of like, thank you for calling. I really, we appreciate.
And the part that I think we have to practice in the mirror, because we have to be prepared for this conversation, because we don't know if it's going to come on the 8th payment or the 80th payment. We don't know, but the customer.
So this isn't necessarily first payment. This is just early within the,
or whenever the first time it happens. It's like we hope the customer is in a rhythm, and they have made many payments successfully on time, in full, and they're in the where we set that tone. We expressed that when we started the deal. We said this is what we expect, and so we're still holding customers accountable to that approach. And so let's stop and think about a minute. What did the customer hear? Like, what's going on in their head when they reach out to us and they're on this 8th payment and they're short? They remember that we said payments got to be in full and on time. They believed us. Apparently, they're still doing it. So now they call with this payment and say, hey, I'm a little short, with this payment. And my approach is going to be, oh no, I see that your payment record, you've had like 7 consecutive, on-time payments. What's going on? We hate to lose that streak of on-time payments. I know it was important to you to get your credit rebuilt, here. So what's going on? What's causing you to come up short? And so the difference is really, it's I'm the wrong person because I have such a straight face all the time, right? I have such a, but I think, and we realize very few conversations anymore are happening in person, but I think it's still appropriate for us to do some practice in a mirror where we say, what is, because this is kind of goes to what you do in customer service, right? It's like when we practice in the mirror, having this conversation with the customer. And so my ready answer is not, yes, of course. See, let's break this down, because if we do nothing else for the rest of this episode, this is the most important thing for people to recognize. When we have a customer who reaches out on the 8th payment and they've made 7 payments on time and we're excited about that, and the customer says, hey, I'm a little short on my payment. I'm hoping I could just pay double next time. What are our choices?
You can say no, or you can say yes.
You can say, say, oh, no problem. I can see you made 7 payments on time. What's going on? So, and then verbally they tell us, well, I've got a little problem. I had some extra medicine. Okay, no problem. Just pay double next time. So I want us to stop and recognize what just happened there.
And this kind of goes to the stuff that we talked about last night. And it was, okay, go. I'm sorry. Go,
no, it's fine.
Jim. Yeah.
So it's like guess we have to dig in a little bit. So this is where I think we have to be prepared as collectors, and we need to prepare our collectors. This is our responsibility as dealers and trainers to make sure our collectors are prepared for this conversation.
Because it will happen.
It'll happen. And so when it happens, the question becomes, how do we respond to that customer in that situation? Now, for me, I hope if I'm the dealer or I'm sitting in your dealership as a collector, that I'm going to have that tone of, oh, shoot, what's going on? We're hoping, obviously, you'd like to be able to keep these payments, your payment string intact. So what's going on? Like, what happened? And if they talk about a medical thing with their kid, had some extra expense with medicine.
Yeah, and we had the kid was sick, yada, yada. Yeah.
So the question for me is really, I'm over here from an empathetic standpoint. I'm accepting that, it certainly could be a true story, but I'm expecting that I'm going to get documentation.
That's the thing that I was like, documentation, because it's like you're going to get a lot of different stories. But if you say, listen, oh, that's okay, we can do that. Just send us a copy of your receipt or from the doctor or something like that, because we just need to have documentation. That's going to set a tone so quickly. It's like, don't feed us a lot of crap. We're going to expect documentation. If there is a problem, we'll work with you, but don't, I mean, how many times can your grandma die? Kind of thing.
Yeah. But again, that's getting negative.
Okay.
That's coming at it from a tone of, I think you're lying to me. And but it's about holding the customer accountable. Look, I believe your story is true. So what
I'm not going to say that to a customer.
No, I know.
But
that's just the attitude that we're bringing to the thing, which we'll talk more about on Wednesday. But basically what I'm saying is, when I approach the customer, and this again is the very first time they've been past due, and they've got a situation and they're calling me, which I recognize is what I asked them to do. So I'm certainly going to meet them part way. So, but the part of what I'm going to do to try to meet them part way is I'm not immediately going to cave to an extension, to extra time. I'm going to work with the customer. I'm going to dig in a little bit. I'm going to be comfortable in my chair, and I'm going to know I got some possible solutions over here. But my first objective is to say, how can I help you figure out how to get this payment made in full today?
Okay. So here's something that I think is really worth saying, though, too, is that our collectors, they have like a list of a zillion and one things to do today. I've got, all this stuff to do. And so are we giving them the bandwidth to be able to have the time to have that conversation too?
Well, I think. Let's go through the rest of it, and then you tell me as a dealer if it's worth the time. Because yes, that is a question for me. Sometimes we talk a lot about how many accounts per collector. And I'm saying, if collectors don't have the time to do what I'm suggesting we do right here, we got a problem. We need to really look at our staffing situation and maybe pay plans. It's like, if I can't afford to give my collector the ability to invest the time right here, let's talk about why. If I go through this exercise with this customer and I say, can we figure out a way? I mean, it's 2:00 and we're open till 6. Can you figure out a way maybe to, if you got somebody who can help you out, or maybe you got, something you can get a loan or whatever, so you can keep this string intact. And because if I dig in a little bit, I went to all this trouble at the time of closing. which might have been 8 weeks or 8 biweekly payments ago. And we went to all this trouble to set this tone and try to get on track and have the discipline to prioritize the car payment. And now we have a chance to just undo that whole thing by just saying, you know what, don't worry about it. You're good. We just, so this is where I think something happens that we make the thing more difficult than it has to be. And so this is something, if we dig in right now, and the very first time a customer's payment comes past due, and this is where, you get to be a big collection agency. It's harder to do this. We have a relationship with this customer. We have a vested interest in their success. We really want to see them do well. And we know they're going to refer friends and family. And we'll talk today about the whole 10-year thing. But it's like, if I dig in right here, I think it's important for us to recognize with our collectors, when we dig in right here and we say, and it's coming from a place of, I want to help you. Let's figure this out. Is there a way we can get this payment? Because there's a good chance if I can help this customer, even if they have to go, get a friend to help them, or, mom helps them out with a little money and they get the payment in on time by 6 o'clock, there's a chance that they will now make the next 80 payments on time without any problem at all. Because we dug in and we said, it's still important. This is what she means with Friday. Friday means Friday. This is still our understanding. It doesn't mean we won't replace the understanding with a new one. But unless we have some justification, this is still our understanding that we're going to make this payment, in full on Friday. And so when I get that call, or when I'm making that call, sometimes it's me making an outbound call and I'm reaching the customer and, hey, so there's a little different attitude, by the way. If we're making this call on Saturday, the payment was due on Friday and the customer didn't call, and now we're talking to them on Saturday, that's a little different
and
thing.
You're talking to them. You're the one that had to reach out to them the day,
right.
than they reaching out to you. Yeah.
But let's stay with the thing about Friday. If I can get this customer to find ways to solve their own problem, I'm going to help them through it.
So it's about you still being helpful, but holding the line to the due date is today. So how can we help you? Can I help give you some ideas? Can I help, do you have this? Could you do this? Like if you have a reward program and they're $100 short, and it's like, if you bring someone in, do you know anybody that wants to buy a car? Because if you bring someone in, that's a check to you for $100,
Sure.
and that'll take care of your payment. Or even, and this is something we could talk about later on in the month, but I'm a real strong believer in having little incentives that your collectors know they can leverage. And so like doing something, you make your payment on time for 8 payments in a row, you get entered into a drawing for $200 gas card, or a $200 grocery card or something like that. And so, they call and they're on there. It's after 8, they get added to this drawing and they're on 7. And this is like their 8th payment. It's like, Susie, you're so close. What can we do? How can I help you? You don't want to miss this opportunity.
Right. So what she's really talking about is part of what separates the white hat approach, is that I find that in collections, and especially in our subprime space where, customers step into an poor credit situation, I find that we know that basic psychology talks a lot about reward and punishment in training or creating new behaviors, right? Well, I find that too often in our buy here, pay here industry, we lean too heavily on the enforcement side, the punitive part, and we don't do enough on the reward side. So that's what you're touching on, is provide rewards and give them reasons and encourage them for being successful. And we just don't do enough of that in my experience. I just don't see it. And for those of you doing it, please speak up and let me know how you do it. But we just think it's something we don't see enough in the industry. And I think it's basic human behavior. And when we just chase them around with a stick all the time, it's not surprising that we end up with kind of an adversarial relationship.
And besides that, a collector, I mean, their job is hard enough as it is, when they're having to deal with people that are late, but giving them opportunities to have wins and successes with the customer, not just like, I was able to get a payment out of them. It's like, oh my gosh, now they get to do the thing. And maybe even like, this goes a little bit deeper into having a program like that, is that the collector that is associated with the account, that the person that won the $200 gift card gets to be one of the people that presents the gift card. And it's like, oh my gosh. And just so glad that whatever.
Yeah.
So
it's more of a celebratory and exciting thing. And so I think
when we excited about it,
when we step in the relationship with the customer, we want to help them visualize kind of what success looks like. I've seen dealers do, like charts on the wall or maps that show here's a successful journey and here's an unsuccessful journey. And I've seen that visually, graphically, but really we just want to try to help the customer understand and we're going to celebrate with you when this all goes well.
There's so many things you can do to help them celebrate.
But I think really
is.
Finish the whole idea about so I dig in with this customer who's asking for time. Listen, I had to buy some medication. I'm going to just tell them, look, unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be able to get you an extension. If you can send me some documentation though, let me see what I can do. So I haven't promised anything. I'm kind of saying it's out of my hands, but I'm saying if you'll send me your documentation, like you had to buy some medicine, if you'll just send me the receipt for that medication, let me take it to a supervisor and see what I can do. I'm on your side. I'm trying to get this worked out, trying to figure this out. So let me just give me something. Give me something I can use to go have a conversation. And now probably what's going to happen, dealers that have been in this business very long know that if I went through that process and I really pushed the customer, say, no, I can't grant you an extension. No, I'm not going to go put in keystrokes and say you can pay in 2 weeks. No, I'm not prepared. So this is the part we have to practice in the mirror. My first answer is no, I'm not giving an extension. I got to find a way to, can we find a way first to get this payment in on time? And then I'm going to continue to work with the customer. And if I ask for that receipt, like they're just like, you really need some printed documentation, then probably sometimes you're going to have the customer say, and I'd love to hear Tommy Brandis speak to this. I bet when I dig that in, that the customer says, you know what, I'm just going to make the payment. I'm going to go work out something with my landlord, or, I'm going to get a payment arrangement with the utility company or blah, blah, blah. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to make the payment. And I bet when that customer makes that payment and now what happens? There are 8 payments in. They now realize when they call and talk to me as the collector, and hope the entire collection department, that they're not just going to accept a story, that some story is not going to buy me more time. That's the part we have to recognize it. If we allow that to happen, then that's going to be the pattern throughout our collection department. And we're going to have lots of delinquency, and we're going to have lots of customers defaulting because we gave that inch and we didn't hold them accountable. And I'm going to, by the way, the documentation, like send me a text message, send it into the system, text it to me or whatever. I need it. It can be on your phone, but I'm going to absolutely have documentation before I grant that very first extension. And that doesn't matter if it's 8 payments in or 80 payments in. Like I'm going to have documentation. With our approach, we get documentation every time. You don't get an extension just verbally.
Which was one of the things we talked about last night. There's an underlying foundational piece to all of the payment exceptions, to all of the, the help, the whatever, is that there is documentation every time a conversation is had, every time you've asked for something in particular.
Sure.
And if you're changing anything on your contract, it is written documentation. And
let's be careful. When you say changing the contract,
right,
there's nothing I'm talking about this about changing the contract. I'm saying allowing a different payment. Because look, all dealers out there, if you only finance the customers who can make every single payment on time all the way to the end of the contract, you'd have virtually no customers. So the reality is, and it doesn't matter if it's a CFPB listening or the Attorney General of New York, it's like, the reality is the customer is going to require some relief from time to time, and it's totally justifiable. You got some unexpected medical thing. You had to pay for half of a engine repair. It's like there are unexpected things that are going to happen. So I'm not going to modify the terms of the contract. I'm not going to go in the software and rework the payment schedule, but I am going to give the customer some payment relief. I'm going to give them some time.
And that's where I'm talking about. It's not necessarily changing the contract, but layering or something that becomes like a shift from that Friday is Friday.
Yeah, it's reaching an understanding and justifying, documenting the reason for granting the customer some more time.
Okay.
So that's really what I'm talking about. And so I think I would be pushing, and we recommend for all our clients, documentation by policy. We got to have documentation. And when the customer produces that documentation, it makes it easy for us to say, yeah, I see that you had to pay $100 for your water pump. So let me get you some time on the payment, and we'll work it out for you to catch that up over the next 3 payments or whatever. We put a written understanding. The customer signs it by DocuSign or whatever kind of, it's so easy for us to sign. They can sign on a smartphone now. So just, get a signature. Let's press for a written understanding, and anything short of that is just, it's not an understanding. Like we don't have an understanding. So one of the things we'll say for the next episode, I want to talk about the scenario where a customer calls in and leaves a voice message after hours and says, hey, I'm a little short. I'm going to need to pay double next time.
Because that happens.
Oh, it happens. And so the question is that in your dealership, does that represent an understanding? Customer calls and leaves a voice message and verbally just says, hey, I'm a little short, so I got to pay double next time. Who's running the show? Like who gets to, how do we, is that an understanding? Are we going to allow that to govern the way we operate with other customers? So, I'm big on handling every customer the same. Nobody gets any favoritism. We don't expect anything of you that we don't require of everyone else. That's kind of part of the white hat thing. And so that way we know that it's not favoritism, and it's just something that we expect of everybody. We're going to hold you to the same standard. And now we've got our ability to manage the collection department, more consistently. So again, on Wednesday, we'll dig in more to this idea of our attitude and approach. You've heard some of that today. We'll talk more specifically about how the attitude that we bring to all these things is going to help us to get more customers to the finish line. More customers are, getting their title or trading into another car a couple years down the line, or whatever that looks like for you, whatever success looks like for you. We want to help get more customers to that place. And so that's why we'll talk Wednesday about just kind of attitude in general and how that can affect the approach to the business. So we'll jump out and ask some of those questions on social media, some more polls, look for polls to kind of lead into that conversation on Wednesday. But until then, we appreciate you tuning in and have yourself a great week out there.
Have a great week. We will see you on Wednesday.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks so much.